I'm not gonna give you my weapons, but I promise not to use them.
There are 206 bones in the human body. 207 if I'm watching Gossip Girl. Here we go. Maximum effort.
If Endgame, Avengers Endgame, was the payoff for watching 10 years of MCU films, Deadpool and Wolverine is the payoff for following all the pedantic film industry news and rumors over the exact same time period. This is a film that will get your nerd boner throbbing if you can appreciate things such as, comic book covers and D-list comic characters and sort of different variations of the same character and comic accurate costumes. But for the most part, this film survives on the goodwill of cameos, Easter eggs, and references. It really amounts to little more than cinematic junk food. I think the plot is absolutely paper thin. The stakes are incredibly dubious, both within the context of the film itself and then the implications on the greater MCU. And the corporate synergy in this movie is just sickening. And as I was walking out of the film, I sort of had two post-movie realizations. Number one, and sort of what I alluded to earlier, is that we are still firmly in Phase 5 of the MCU, and its multiversal bent means that nothing is sacred, death doesn't mean anything, and the Deus Ex Machinas that you can invent are infinite. And then the other thing that I sort of realized is, as with last year's Barbie, there's something incredibly craven about this sort of corporate-approved satire that is in both of these films. The movie is just constantly patting itself on the back for taking the piss out of its corporate masters, and the fact that it's a self-admitted cash-in. And I want this movie to kind of serve as a reminder to Hollywood that just because you diegetically acknowledge your shortcomings within the film itself, it doesn't guard you against criticism of those very things. And so, forming an opinion on this movie is a constant struggle between my inner critic and fanboy, and it was a film that I really enjoyed the experience of watching as I was sitting there in the theater surrounded by a sold-out crowd. It was incredibly fun. But the film itself does not hold up to scrutiny, and it does not have the ingredients of a well-made movie. Welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt, that is Chuck, and this is episode 49. Today's show is going to be all Marvel all the time. We've got Marvel in the news, we've got Marvel in the watch list, and that's all leading up to our featured review of Deadpool and Wolverine. Deadpool makes his fourth wall shattering jump to the MCU, the third entry in his film series, which promises to be a comic nerd's wet dream. But does it make a well-constructed movie? We'll answer that question a bit later in the show. For now, please do like, please do subscribe, and then a couple of announcements here. Chuck has a new supersized minisode on the channel. It's all about comparing our current real-life political situation with that of the seemingly predictive Aaron Sorkin show, The West Wing. And then also in kind of a random but welcome bit of news, from time to time here on the channel, we do director retrospectives. And a couple years ago, we did one on the fantastic works of S. Craig Zahler, specifically his film Bone Tomahawk, that we did an episode on, is sort of having a bit of a renaissance. So if you haven't, go over and watch our Bone Tomahawk episode from a couple years ago. Just search Theater and Stream. Or wait, were we still from the mezzanine at that point?
We were still from the mezzanine at that point.
Okay. Yeah, go search From the Mezzanine Bone Tomahawk review, and you'll find it. But
a lot of people are finding it, because July has been an amazing month for our little channel as far as views are concerned. That one in particular was I think it had 250 views. Before July, and and that was like 2 years ago that that particular video was, live streamed, and now it's easily gotten exactly 2,000 views, more than what it was at before July. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, so I had the theory. I kind of was looking into this a bit, looking on Google and sorting my Google feed by news. And a week and a half ago, author Stephen King tweeted out to his 7.1 million Twitter followers, I was expecting nothing but a time passer on a rainy Wednesday morning, but what I got was a low budget Western epic. The dialogue alone makes Bone Tomahawk well worth watching, but beware the last act when a man is literally torn apart. So that is my guess, because basically what happened was, Stephen King tweeted this out to his huge number of Twitter followers, and then a bunch of film websites jumped on the SEO train with it, like, generating a bunch of articles about it. And so I think that's kind of what we have to think, who we have to thank for this.
That's really funny.
Mhm.
Yeah, because and that was a really fun retrospective to do. We also reviewed Brawl on Cell Block 99 or whatever that one's called, and Dragged Across Concrete. He's an interesting filmmaker. I have lost complete track of him since we did the retrospective. I don't know if he's got anything in the works or not. But Bone Tomahawk was my introduction to it. And I actually had that last act spoiled for me by Ain't It Cool News, because they linked a video to the human the human butchering scene. So I got to see it in all of its glory before I even had the context of its larger scope and virtues. It's such a Matthew Fox's that's the actor, right? The Lost Cat.
Matthew Fox.
Yeah, I forgot how of an asshole he was, but he's such a capable character until he isn't. But that movie is well worth your time. Our discussion on it, looking back on it, because I rewatched the episode. Yeah, it's interesting seeing how much we've developed even since then. Because even at that time, we were light years ahead of where we were with episode 1. But this episode and our review of War Pony?
Yeah, War Pony.
That one's also getting a random burst in viewership as well, and that's always been a nice thing to see happen with our little channel. And I'm equally surprised that this particular minisode is doing so well, considering how long it is. I didn't intend for it to be that long. I had a script, and then I just completely went off the rails when I was recording, and I had the nightmare of nightmares while I was recording this. This is just some behind the scenes details. I recorded the whole thing, and I was like, okay, cool. Now I can edit this bad boy together. I still hadn't realized how long I had been talking. And then I threw the clips rather, just to check the audio and see how it all came out, and nothing was coming out of my headphones. And I was like, what the hell? What's not happening here? And I started freaking out, thinking I had to re-record the whole thing. I had a small window because I was off on Friday, or it was off on Tuesday, so I could, get the bad boy, finished up. And when I went back on Tuesday to look at what I had recorded previously, there was no audio. And I was just freaking out. And then I realized my headphones were unplugged. So I could, after about 15 minutes of sheer panic, I got it all together. And,
nice.
And not a lot of comments, which I'm okay with, because it's kind of a thorny, sticky topic that I ventured into. But
people have more opinions on my thoughts on Deadpool and Wolverine than they do on your thoughts on it's like it should be the reverse, but for some reason people get more gussied up about comic books than they do our real life political situation,
or they're just commenting on the opinion commentariat channels. It speaks to the people who click on our links, I think, who we're actually directed to. They might not be as interested in politics as I am, but like I did in 2020, I recommend watching The West Wing just for a palate cleanse from reality, because yeah, it is an opiate for all the bullshit that we put up in the real world, because you do get a sense for, oh, this is how it maybe used to be. Maybe it was idealized to an extent, but it still is a good show with great characters and great writing. I don't know if it's in, I think it still is in standard definition, unfortunately, but it's still a good watch.
Yeah.
Moving on to the real important news of the day here. Who gives a shit about the presidential election? We had some like craziness come up in Hall H, Fabled Hall H, which you have been in, Matt. And I was in there for one thing. And I can't even remember what it was anymore. But we were there. And this time, Marvel is swinging for the fences. I think they're showing a hint of desperation, because we have the Russo brothers coming back, because their other endeavors aren't quite panning out in streaming realms like they thought it would. And now they're back in the saddle, and they brought out all these Doom bots on stage, and we'll just break down this moment for us as we watch it.
Yeah, basically they brought out all these, Doctor Dooms, and then Robert Downey Jr. shows up as the shortest Doctor Doom.
Doesn't he have lips though?
He does, yeah. He does wear lifts, but I think he was still among the shortest. You can see there, yeah. He's definitely still among the shortest of the Doctor Dooms. But yeah, he comes out, he rips the mask off, and oh my God, it's Tony Stark, and why is he dressed up like Doctor Doom? And they announce that essentially the next Avengers film, the 2026 Avengers film, is retitled Avengers Doomsday, and it will be followed up a year later by Secret Wars, another Avengers film. And yeah, the Russo brothers are coming back, the sort of architects of the phase 3 and 4 of the Marvel MCU. And so that was the big thing. And then of course there was, more, they piled on everything like about the Fantastic Four, and I think there was even something in there about Giancarlo Esposito's role in the new Captain America movie was revealed as Sidewinder, the leader of the Serpent Society. And so yeah, just a deluge of information. But yeah, the big thing is the Doom thing.
And what was your spit take? Did you have were you drinking something at the time? Because I was, and I dang near spat all over my computer screen.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, especially, I mean, this has to be, you would think, this has to be because they are doing something else with Tony Stark. Whether that be like Doom putting his like consciousness in Tony Stark, or they're plucking Tony Stark out of another multiverse, and I have no idea. And maybe in another multiverse, Tony Stark becomes Doctor Doom. I have no idea, but I don't think, because what if it would be so funny if they literally were just casting Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom, because they want him as the villain role. They want him to sort of do what he did to the Tony Stark role, but do it for Doctor Doom. And they never even acknowledge the fact that he played Tony Stark. I mean, that would be the real like maverick move in my opinion. But yeah, no doubt there's no doubt I'm wrong on that, and that they're doing some bullshittery with Tony Stark's dead body or something.
Because that was my thought too, and I hate it. I hate it so much. And I hate the fact that they revealed it. Like, they would have done better to not have revealed who was playing Doom at all until the moment that he's revealed on screen. That would have that would have been the way to do it. That would have knocked people's socks off. That they would have built some anticipation and mystery. People would be wondering. There'd be something to actually dissect in the trailers, beyond just people doing it for the sake of it. And I don't know, there's a guy I work with who is just like visibly upset by like how they approached it. He's not mad that RDJ is back. He's excited about that, but he absolutely hates the fact that they revealed it. And I agree with him, obviously, because they could have done something killer by not doing it, but they needed to give the public something like a genuine like slap across the face, like, here, care about what we're doing again, give us another chance. And I guess this was the way to do it. But honestly, I would have rather seen any other actor in this role. You know, like there could have been like, have Giancarlo Esposito be Doctor Doom. He's so wasted as like this throwaway villain who's only going to appear in one Captain America movie. And
sure.
And that guy is born to play villains. It will be interesting to see RDJ do it, but it's not as interesting of a casting choice, and their approach to rolling it out, I think in the long term will be remembered as a mistake. But now I think we have to talk about the elephant in the room. Like, because based on my research, they stopped calling this Avengers movie the Kang Dynasty, obviously right around the time that Jonathan Majors had his legal issues, and internally it was just called Avengers 5. And from what we have heard from the trailer that was shown, or the clips, or like the teaser that was shown about Fantastic Four, we know that it's set in the 60s, and we also know that Galactus is the villain. And how exactly are they going to introduce Doctor Doom in an after credit sequence at the end of that movie? And how are they going to tie it with the sacred timeline, as it were?
Yeah.
How are they going to advance them to the present? And how are we going to explain their lack of presence in the Marvel universe as we know it?
Well, I mean, I think it comes down to what everything seems to come down to in this current phase that we're in of the MCU. And it just comes down to the multiverse. I mean, the multiverse, we'll get into this more later in the show when we talk about Deadpool and Wolverine. But to me, the multiverse, introducing it, was one of the biggest mistakes that the MCU made, because it's basically a do anything I want button, where you can just, death doesn't mean anything, nothing has any stakes, because you can reverse anything, you can bring anybody back from the dead, you can do anything you want. And I'm sure that's exactly what they're going to do with this, where the Fantastic Four were never mentioned in the MCU so far, because the Fantastic Four didn't exist in our MCU so far. They existed in another universe. And what's going to happen is they're going to get plucked out of their 1960s universe and put into ours. And then there's going to be all sorts of hijinks about how, like, oh, look at these smartphone things, and, you know, stuff like that. And like, you know, to all types of comic relief at the expense of, you know, these people being plopped into, you know, 60 years in the future. But yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen, I think. It all is just going to be multiverse bullshit.
It's inevitable. Even though, like, a part of me felt like Deadpool versus Wolverine felt like okay, we're closing the door on this nonsense. We're going to do everything that we possibly can do and just blow our load and move on. But unfortunately, I think you're right. They're not quite done with that nonsense yet. And but then I guess that does open the door for the fact that if they defeat Galactus in their timeline, their alternate universe that they're in, that he can reappear in a subsequent movie, you know, again, in his sacred timeline incarnation. But yeah, they're falling into the trap that the comics fall into. There's just too many fucking timelines to keep track of. They need to have a Crisis on Infinite Earths so that they can just, you know, call, like, but then they have this bullshit bureaucracy calling the multiverse for them. It's, I don't know. We'll get into all that, you know, because I never watched Loki, so Deadpool and Wolverine was my introduction to them. And I don't know if that was maybe a good thing, but any idea who is going to be Galactus?
Yeah, I don't know, because you almost have to have it be like some sort of CG character, which I think, you know what, now that I say that, I think it actually is, because isn't, I think the character is going to be like pretty much all CG, and then the voice is going to be done by Ralph Ineson, isn't it?
Oh, really? That's right. I forgot about that. Okay.
Yeah, the Green Knight. So, yeah, I think
perfect.
that's what they'll do, and I don't think. Yeah, I mean, he's just going to be a giant CGI creation. I mean, look, I hope that they'll actually show him. I don't know if you remember the last time in what was it, the Rise of the Silver Surfer, the Fantastic Four movie. Galactus was literally just a big cloud of like gas, and they never actually showed him.
It was very disappointing. Like they kind of took a cue from Warren Ellis's Ultimates version of it, where he was just this giant mass of robots, basically, that just chew up and destroy a planet, and very uninspired. But and in this one, we're gonna have kind of an androgynous or a female coded Silver Surfer as well, which will be, I guess, a little different. And of course, we have the Thunderbolts, something that is probably better suited towards one of their streaming shows than being a movie. And that was very conspicuous. No new TV shows were announced.
Yeah.
Just
well,
movies.
I think is Thunderbolts a movie or is it a show?
My understanding is that it was going to be a movie.
Okay. Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Okay, interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I will give them credit for that they are, for the most part, keeping these things to the movies again, and I think that's where they belong. I have never really liked an MCU show as much as really any of the movies. I mean, it's just not. I guess like the WandaVision was okay, but I don't know. It's not the venue for this type of thing, because it always comes off as just like the B plots to the film's A plots, basically. And it never seems substantial. It never seems meaningful, in my opinion. And so, yeah, I will give them credit for that. They should keep doing movies and just kind of pump the brakes on the shows.
Know what else was missing? The giant, like, grid with like all of the things with all their logos on it. Like, we don't have that graphic to work with this time around, which I was a little sad about, because I always enjoyed looking at those things, even though they bordered on the absurd sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's nice too, because I think the reason why they did that is because as of right now, they're only planning like 2 years out, because I want to say that the furthest planned thing right now is Secret Wars, and that is only what 2.5 years, I want to say, or something like that. So it's nice that they're not like, we're gonna do this movie in 6 years, that type of thing. It's you're kind of putting the cart before the horse when you do that.
Definitely. Well, anything else to add on this topic?
No, not much. I mean, I guess if I had to mention anything else, it would be that I want to see in this Doomsday Avengers movie how often they feel the need to have Doctor Doom without his mask, because
mask stay the fuck on.
I hope so, because that really interests me, because when they did Tony Stark, they always had a sort of a way out to show him with keeping the mask on, and that's when they would always do those shots where you could see inside of his helmet. You could see his face, and then you could see all of like his like computer readouts around him, but you don't have that with Doctor Doom. So it's like you either keep the mask on like the entire time, or you come up with some stupid like contrived reason why he keeps taking his mask off and showing you have to remind the audience that it's Robert Downey Jr. that's under there,
But doesn't that break the character though? Like his whole reason for wearing his getup is because he's so disfigured and mangled, right?
Yes, yeah, and that's the way it should be, most definitely. But I'm thinking in terms of like,
Yeah.
yeah, of just like of big corporate Disney, and they're gonna want to show Robert Downey Jr.'s face. So if they can hold off, if they can, exercise a bit of restraint, then I'll give them credit for that.
All right. Because moving on to the watch list, I for some reason felt inspired to go back and watch Captain America: Civil War this week.
Yeah.
Because it had been a really long time since I saw it. And I am no longer a pot smoking degenerate, so I could, attempt to try and remember it, a little bit better. And holy crap. Like the action in this Captain America trilogy, like the staging of it, the set pieces and the sequences still hold up. I forgot how depthly they wove the Civil War storyline into the MCU. Like they didn't go full on, like superhero registration where Iron Man just turns into this fascistic tyrant who's banishing people to the negative zone if they act out too much. And of course, it doesn't end with Captain America getting assassinated. Yeah. Rest in peace, William. That's William Hurt, right? Playing
Yes.
Thunderbolt Ross.
Yep.
Now Harrison Ford has the role, but yeah, I really, really enjoyed it, and it still has the gravity, all these years later. So I poo-pooed it a bit too much a few weeks ago when I brought up how I thought the final the main battle between everybody on that Air Force base was lame. I forgot how awesome everything else was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the airport battle is definitely, pretty contrived, where they're like, we need to find a place where there's no civilians so that there can be absolutely no collateral damage. And so let's show up at this empty airport in Germany, and it's clearly it's clear that they're not even on an actual like location. They're, it's all green screen, but I mean, for me, I personally love in that particular movie, I love all the stuff between Tony Stark and Captain America, as far as like them fighting, and then the highlight action set piece in that movie for me is their final battle. When it's those two and Bucky, and they're fighting each other, and Cap and Bucky are kind of teaming up to take down Iron Man. That is like the set piece, the action set piece of that movie for me personally, because you can tell that it's actually like that they're actually like there, and they're like doing actual stuff. And but yeah, that movie is still pretty great.
I do want to point out the line that everyone made fun of from Civil War that Mark Millar wrote about, like, you plant your tree by the river of truth and you say, no, you move. How they gave that to Peggy instead. But it still worked, but I appreciated the fact that they didn't jettison it, along with some of the other aspects. Next on the watch list here, another movie that's been in theaters and has been doing fairly well for what it is. It's part of the renaissance of the pale and male. And it's Twisters, the sequel no one asked for, but in the end, was it worth your time, Matt?
Well, I'm going to ask you this question in a second, but I wanted to let you know first that what possessed me to see Twisters in theaters, and it's because my wife just happens to be like one of the biggest fans I know of the original movie for some reason.
Same here.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, because she absolutely loves that movie, and I honestly, I probably wouldn't have ever even seen this in theaters otherwise. But yeah, we went and saw this at the biggest screen we could find in our area, and yeah, I mean, it was exactly what I thought it was going to be, I guess. Which is to say fine. I mean, it's at times it's really stupid. At times it's really exciting. I like how they treat the title twisters as basically um like a horror movie monster, basically. Where it's like there are points in this movie where a twister literally like sneaks up on people. Like 1 second it's not there, and then the next second it's there, and it's like they treat the twister as like a movie monster, basically. And it's sort of interesting in that regard. But yeah, it was fine. I do think it's funny how this movie is getting like pigeonholed as like the blockbuster for middle America, where like all of like the more so than anything because of the obnoxious country music soundtrack in the movie. But I think a lot of the like coastal film critics really can't let go of the fact that not every blockbuster is going to be set in either San Francisco or New York. And so it's kind of getting painted as like the blockbuster for the working class. And it's just kind of funny.
Yellowstone fans have a reason to go out of their homes. Like that's the vibe. Yeah. And my take on it is this: what makes that first movie so watchable is that everybody who was in it, all the supporting cast, they all had personalities. They were distinct. There was charm. It's a hangout movie. That's how I view it. And it was a kind of simpler time in storm chasing. Like the people, like it's unclear how these people even like supported themselves. You know what I mean? Like looking back on the first one, it's like, okay, yeah, can you afford to do nothing but this? Like, do you have a grant? Like I can't remember if they explain how they do it, but it just that isn't present here. The leads are at least memorable and have charisma, but everyone else that surrounds them, there's way too many teams of people, and they're all really boring and dull. Like the guy that directed Tar is in Twisters.
Yeah, that's right.
And Philip Seymour Hoffman is in Twisters. And there's like a smattering of those guys throughout that movie. And they basically were doing for this what Top Gun Maverick did. Like they obviously casted our boy in it to kind of give it that juice. And it never reaches the heights. It doesn't have the humor. It doesn't have the I don't know. Like the first movie treated the Twister like a monster too, to an extent. There's a really like memorable sequence where there's just these people at a drive-in movie theater watching The Shining, and then a Twister rips through the screen. It just like sneaks up on people in the night and is really devastating. But this takes it to a level that bordered on the absurd, and I just wasn't as invested in the cohort as I was the first time around. It lacked.
Well, the shame is that they got the cast, in my opinion, but they didn't do anything with them. You have Katie O'Brien from Love Lies Bleeding. You have Sasha Lane, from Utopia. You have Mara Tierney as the mom.
Yeah.
You have fucking Superman himself, David Corenswet. And you have like Sally Draper shows up for literally like one scene, just like she did in Longlegs. So you have the cast, you have the supporting cast, but they didn't do shit with any of them.
Yeah.
And so they really could have.
They fumbled the bag, as it were, but it still is successful. It has the thrills. It's got the booming, the sound mix that really makes the theatrical experience worth it. And yeah, but it left me whelmed, unfortunately.
What do you I'm kind of curious because this movie is directed by Lee Isaac Chung, who is the notable as the director of the tiny indie drama from a couple years ago, Minari. And
I guess I didn't make that connection. What the fuck?
oh, really? Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, that's like one of the only reasons I was interested in this. Yeah, because yeah, he's the guy who directed Minari, and he's never done any other movie. That was his first film, and so I'm sort of curious if you think that there's anything that he did for this movie. Like, is there anything that getting the guy who directed Minari does for this movie, or has his style basically just been completely subsumed by the blockbuster filmmaking of it all?
I would say that there was a little more heft to like the tragic and dramatic scenes. You know, like like survivor's guilt is a theme that embodies both Twisters movies, or like Twister and Twisters, and they leaned a little too heavily into that, I think, and that like you because who directed the first one? Was it?
Oh God, what is his name? He's one of those really is it Remy Harlan, or it's one of those really famous shitty action movie directors. I can't remember, but
It's only showing me the everything I click on. Jan de Bont. I was about to say that, but
yeah, Jan de Bont.
Sure. Well, and here's another thing that I also forgot. Michael Crichton co-wrote the screenplay for it.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
So
that tracks.
That
definitely.
tracks. That definitely tracks.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I personally think that the ways in which I sort of saw this movie through Lee Isaac Chung's eyes are the scenes in which we get all of like the rural scenery where the film sort of slows down, and he actually grew up in rural Arkansas. Lee Isaac Chung did, and the whole there's a reason why they picked him to do this movie. It's because this movie's set in Oklahoma, rural Oklahoma. That movie, Minari, his first movie, was set in rural Arkansas, and it's about a Asian family that moves to rural Arkansas, and they have to sort of make their way living, off the land essentially. And so the way in which I sort of saw the peaks of his style sort of break through the veneer of blockbuster was, anytime we were getting those big shots of like rural Oklahoma, and there's that one scene where there's like their super indulgent photography where Daisy Edgar Jones is like throwing the dandelion into the wind to use like her weather superpowers to figure out where and I'm like, wow, this is like surprisingly beautiful, like what is happening here. And I think it's because they got him, and then everything else is just, pretty typical blockbuster. But
no, that aspect of it did have a lot of authenticity to it. And he made he's getting some flack in the press because he said that he just wanted to make an entertaining film. He didn't want to put global warming messaging in there. But it's actually, like, speaking of climate change though, what's like an actual phenomena that is observable, like in the last few years, Tornado Alley is moving. It's
really?
Yeah, it like Oklahoma is the center of it, or at least like traditionally, but now it's moving east. And you're seeing tornadoes in Tennessee and in like the deeper South, as opposed to the Midwest, Southwest. And I think if we're going to get another one, it's going to be about that. Like that should be the angle. Like you have to acknowledge reality to an extent in these, ridiculous, nature horror movies like this. And then that would be a way to do it, because if it's a region that isn't accustomed to dealing with them, they're even more devastating. Their readiness isn't there. My buddy Jake Decker is in Tennessee. He runs he manages like the pharmacy and like I think an entire Kroger as well. And his store just got destroyed. Like last I think it wasn't even last, it was this year. It was like in the spring. It was a freak occurrence. But
yeah, much more densely populated too. Bigger cities in Tennessee and much more dense. Yeah. So yeah, that could make for a a very, very depressing reality or a very, very interesting third Twisters movie.
I don't know what you'd call it, but I just want to see a
Yeah.
skyscraper eaten alive by a tornado. That's
Yeah.
what I'm hoping for. But
Mhm.
speaking of wish fulfillment, Deadpool vs. Wolverine is our main event today, and by God, it is the definition of that. Take it away with the intro.
Yeah, so if Endgame, Avengers Endgame was the payoff for watching 10 years of MCU films, Deadpool and Wolverine is the payoff for following all the pedantic film industry news and rumors over the exact same time period. This is a film that will get your nerd boner throbbing if you can appreciate things such as, comic book covers and D-list comic characters and sort of different variations of the same character and comic accurate costumes. But for the most part, this film survives on the goodwill of cameos, Easter eggs, and references. It really amounts to little more than cinematic junk food. I think the plot is absolutely paper thin. The stakes are incredibly dubious, both within the context of the film itself and then the implications on the greater MCU. And the corporate synergy in this movie is just sickening. And as I was walking out of the film, I sort of had two post movie realizations. Number one, and sort of what I alluded to earlier, is that we are still firmly in phase 5 of the MCU, and its multiversal bent means that nothing is sacred, death doesn't mean anything, and the Deus Ex Machinas that you can invent are infinite. And then the other thing that I sort of realized is, as with last year's Barbie, there's something incredibly craven about this sort of corporate approved satire that is in both of these films. The movie is just constantly patting itself on the back for taking the piss out of its corporate masters, and the fact that it's a self-admitted cash-in. And I want this movie to kind of serve as a reminder to Hollywood that just because you diegetically acknowledge your shortcomings within the film itself, it doesn't guard you against criticism of those very things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, forming an opinion on this movie is a constant struggle between my inner critic and fanboy. And it was a film that I really enjoyed the experience of watching as I was sitting there in the theater surrounded by a sold out crowd. It was incredibly fun. But the film itself does not hold up to scrutiny, and it does not have the ingredients of a well-made movie. And so, yeah, it's kind of where I'll leave it. But yeah, Chuck, what did you think of Deadpool and Wolverine?
I think you made some very fair assessment. You had the prompt, here, finish this sentence. The success of Deadpool and Wolverine proves that the why and the how of like what is going on plot wise in a Marvel movie does not matter. What matters is just what's happening. And truly, this is a movie created for you to just turn your brain off and just bask in all of its excesses, and then just prepare for the next product. Like with the old Red Letter Media nerd crew meme. Just get excited, and what, and that's my beef with it. All of the endearing side characters from the first two Deadpool movies literally just show up at the beginning and the end. They might as well have not even been in it, and that cheapens what makes those two movies so great, in my opinion. It was because they came up with their original people. They worked with the characters around him, like Blind Al, and Blind Al is just there to be a punchline in this, just to talk about cocaine. That's it, and instead we get cameos. And I do want to say there was a part of me that almost like my eyes got moist at the idea of, oh my God, Channing Tatum finally gets to be Gambit. This we've made fun of this guy for 10 years because we never got to see him in this. When I saw Laura Schuler Donner's name come across in the opening like credit fight, I was like, oh fuck, she's still around. You know, she still gets to put her name on something. And this is probably the last time. And like as I lingered in the theater and I watched that graduation farewell video at the end, it kind of hit me. And I was like, wow, I can't believe they would do something like, I don't know. I thought that like, it felt very sincere to me that it was like, it was a farewell to an era that really paved the way for the MCU. Were it not for the Fox Marvel movies, we would not be here. It had its highs and it had its depths of lows, but there was just something like satisfying about seeing all these people get to just have one last, shake at it and then, walk off into the sunset. And of course, that's the emotional core of everyone's involvement. And like all of like the characters that like all of those actors from those movies getting to reprise it, all they wanted was a final good, like they wanted an ending because they never ever truly got one because their movie bombed or they went to jail for tax evasion or something like that. And for one reason or another, things just, they couldn't get it to work out as beautifully as Marvel proved that it could be done. And for a one shining moment, we got it in this, but it's packaged and just slathered in a whole bunch of bullshit product placement, just an obscene amount of fourth wall breaks and metatextual commentary on the movie's very existence. And it just stopped being clever. Like after the first like 20 minutes, and I just was like, okay, what else can you do, movie? And there wasn't much else it could do.
Yeah, the if you look at the credits for this movie, it has 5 screenwriters, including Ryan Reynolds. And as I was sort of watching the film, I sort of realized that a lot of the jokes are, I think Ryan Reynolds has literally been stuck in like Van Wilder mode for his entire career. And a lot of the movie's comedy really just amounts to stacking like verbs, adverbs, and adjectives, and then like layering it with profanity. So, people are just constantly like, you're a taint sniffing, jizz gargling, cousin of Hitler, donut hole fucker. It's just like, you're just stacking words together and there's no joke there. You're just saying profanity. And, that's like, especially with that dumb, like Chris Evans bit where, he's like, at one point, I think he says like cinnamon roll or cinnamon hole licking. And it's like, what does that even mean? And so,
the butthole.
Yeah, I guess, it's probably butthole, but I've never heard that before. And it's very, very, a lot of the movie's comedy just kind of fell flat in that regard. But then I think about half of it didn't work in that way. But then, the stuff where they actually tried, does work as far as like the, I like the reoccurring bit where, Deadpool keeps saying to Wolverine, till you're not.
Yeah.
That thing. And like that was good. And I like the bit where he like, when he's in the TVA and he grabs like the boom mic and the camera and like headbutts it. Yeah. And so, I mean, there's stuff in here that is good, but yeah, a lot of it just comes down to like profanity and just like saying random mishmashes of words together. But, I will give them credit though I didn't think it was going to go as far as it did in some points. And it did, because it was always the expectation that Disney or Kevin Feige was going to make them sort of pull back a little bit on a lot of the jokes, but I don't think they did. I think they pretty much got
to going as far as they could, if not further.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So yeah, I'll give them credit for that, but I have to bring this up because, my minisode pissed off so many people, but I think that first of all, the way that this movie handled the movie Logan was exactly how I said it was going to,
They
where,
literally dig
you
up
know,
his grave and then use his
yeah,
skeleton as a weapon.
yeah. And so,
They
like, in that
desecrated the
way,
corpse of Logan as much as they could. That's canon
yeah.
now.
And that was, see, that part was that part was funny. That part was good. But as far as, like, how are you going to get Logan to show up in this movie? And it's because, they pull him out of the multiverse. But I just think Kevin Feige is such a fucker because in the lead up to this movie, he was, making the rounds, and he constantly got asked the question, what are you going to do about Logan? What are you going to do about the movie Logan? And his sort of line that he said in various permutations was basically always like, how can we do this in a way that doesn't negate the amazing drama and emotion of Logan? How do we respect the memory of Logan? And the answer is you just don't. You just completely fuck with that movie, and you make it so that nobody can ever watch the movie Logan again and not think of the corpse of Wolverine, being used as a weapon, basically. And so in that way, I think it is kind of funny where he basically just lied about that.
So, and this just makes me ask the question here, based on the ending, is Deadpool actually a part of the sacred timeline now, or does he just have the ability to pop in whenever he wants?
Yeah, that is a good question. You mean, like, as far as if he'll show up again, like, in the actual
Will
MCU
he
films?
be in an Avengers movie?
Yeah, that would be crazy because I wonder how they would do it, because it'll come off as being he'll come off as being gimped if he's in one of the PG-13, narratively standard, films. The other MCU films, they don't break the fourth wall. They don't have the R rating. So it's like, what do you do with a character like Deadpool when you can't do those things? And I don't know. I think, though, all signs kind of point to it happening. And the first sort of bit of evidence that we get of this is that weird scene of, like, Thor holding the dying Deadpool that we never get any answer for. And so I don't know. I almost feel as if that's gonna pop up again. Like, Deadpool will die or something.
And Thor will cry.
Yeah, Thor will cry. Yeah.
Because my thought is that, like, he's gonna, if it happens, he's gonna be like, like, he's gonna show up and he's just gonna kind of notice, like, oh my goodness, I can't swear, I can't do the things I normally want. Like, his one metatextual thing will be acknowledging that he is gimped, and then they'll let him have his one fuck at some point in the movie.
Sure.
They'll give it to him. Because, like, has there ever been an F word in a Marvel movie proper?
No, just the Fox ones, because there's that scene. I think it's in what is it, Days of Future Past, where Xavier approaches Wolverine in the bar.
It was First Class.
First Class, yeah. And then he says "fuck off." Yeah.
Yeah. Different time, different era.
Yeah.
Rest in peace. But yeah, because, like, that was my thought, because it seemed, it was even, like, I was confused. Because when he shows up to interview for the Avengers, how the fuck did he get there? How did he enter the sacred timeline for that job interview?
I think it was, I don't know if, well, because at the end of Deadpool 2, he has he has Cable's time traveling thing.
That's right. Okay.
And so I don't know how he got to that universe, but the implication is that he used Cable's time traveling device thing to go back in time, because the scene with Happy Hogan takes place pre-Infinity War, I believe. So that would have been 2018. So, but I'm not really sure how he used that to jump universes. I guess that was lost on me a bit.
Yeah, like, that was a glaring plot hole. If we're gonna, if you can identify one in this movie in particular, because as a multiverse movie, like you've pointed out, they can just do whatever the hell they want. And of course they did something that, to me, didn't quite make logical sense, even within the context we're working in. But
Yeah. But speaking of doing anything they want, I want to know what your sort of personal favorite Easter egg or cameo or whatever was.
oh, that's tough. I really liked seeing
Because for
Wesley
me,
Snipes' Blade again. That made
yeah, Wesley Snipes. That was amazing.
That made
because
me very, very happy. I'll tell you what my least favorite one was in a bit. But what was your favorite one?
sure. Well, I liked my probably personal favorite little Easter egg was the Wolverine crucified comic book cover by Mark Silvestri that they, he when he was traveling to find the different Logans, he popped up in that universe for a bit. And so that was really cool. I mean, there was multiple comic book covers they did, or Old Man Logan, and they did the Logan, the Weapon X Logan. They did the comic book cover. I think it's Todd McFarlane, where you see the reflection of Hulk and Wolverine's claws on the cover, and so all that stuff was just absolute like catnip to me. But as far as like the cameos went, I personally loved that they got all of these Bryan Singer era actors to come back and just literally stand in the background and have no lines, like
and then get murdered horribly.
Yeah, they just get murdered, like Azazel and Lady Deathstrike from X2 and Callisto and Psylocke, and all these people just showed up, and they're just standing in the background of those scenes in the like the wasteland place. And they even have the Russian, which is not in this universe anyways, it's not an X-Men character. He was literally one of the like side villains from the Thomas Jane Punisher movie. So that was really interesting in my opinion, that they got like Punisher villains in there, but he wasn't played by Kevin Nash in this one.
Yeah, unfortunately. So. What did you think of the Henry Cavill, like the Cavalrine cameo?
That was funny. I mean, it was I could have done without it, I guess. It seemed like more than anything it was just like them it was just the MCU flopping their dick on the table and just being like, like, look at what we got, DC. We got Henry Cavill to show up for 5 seconds.
Cheered. Like they were like applauding that moment. Okay, interesting. People really liked that.
That's so weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how you would that would get such a pop from people unless you were just full of a theater with a lot of Henry Cavill fans, or if people were reacting to like the metatextual nature of the cameo by just being like, yeah, fuck DC. Yeah, fuck Henry Cavill's in a Marvel movie. Fuck DC. That type of thing.
Yeah. There's definitely a part of it. My least favorite thing that they did, even though I understand why they had to do it, was the Deadpool cores. That was that just was such a wet fart, even though they made like a big bloody fight out of it. But and the way it was resolved just annoyed the shit out of me, because it's like, oh, just because you have a Peter Wisdom, they're just gonna stop trying to kill you? That makes no sense. They're just gonna throw away all of their whatever their motivation was for working for Cassandra Nova. I didn't get it. I didn't buy it. I didn't like that.
Yeah, same. It was, that whole scene just felt like an afterthought. Everything from, why they were, fighting in the first place, to the actual set of that scene sucked so much. It was like the most Hollywood backlot, like street set I have ever seen in my life, where it's like, oh my god, you are literally just hanging out on like the backlot of like Universal Studios right now, because it's just like the most generic movie street on a backlot I've ever seen. And so yeah, it looked awful. And
did you catch
the only thing,
the storefront behind them at the beginning of it?
It was
Liefeld's
it was the feet thing, right? Yeah, Liefeld's feet. Yeah.
That was funny.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. Yeah, I did like that, and I did like the Wolverine finally pulling the mask on, because that was always something they said they could he could never do. Going back to what we were saying earlier about Robert Downey Jr. and Doctor Doom, Wolverine not having a mask was always the thing that he was never able to do in the Fox movies, because the Fox execs didn't allow him to. They said, "No, you will not have a mask, because we want people to see that it is fucking Hugh Jackman in our movie."
Yeah. And then, of course, that wonderful moment is punctuated by a blowjob joke by Deadpool. Like, they just can't help but, take a piss on even the great things that this movie made possible. They can't help but kind of ruin it.
Yeah, undercut it, definitely. Yeah. But yeah, anything else you wanted to mention about the movie itself? I know that. What did you think of Cassandra Nova?
I thought they did they did a good little misdirection where they made you think that and I hated it in the moment where it's like, oh, she's gonna do something nice for them for no good reason. This character's supposed to be irredeemable. She is the definition of evil, and she has to be destroyed. That's my perception of the character. And then to have it come back around and have it just it's like, oh, okay, now I know more about what's going on here. I like the idea of what the Time Ripper can do. I'm gonna use that. I don't know, I liked it. If this was the only time we're gonna have Cassandra Nova in a movie, this was a good way to do it. And for the most part, she didn't piss me off.
Yeah, same. I mean, it almost, at this point, it sort of feels like a waste almost, because I thought, the performance was really good, and the character is compelling, as far as you get, these little glimmers of the character's backstory, and, why she's pissed off as a character. And it almost sucks that she's dead now, because they can't. I mean, of course, yeah, you could always pull another one out of the multiverse, but the character that we met in this film is dead, and so it does seem like a bit of a waste, because I did enjoy the performance and the character, and yeah, it was great. But what about, well, we already talked about Deadpool showing up in more MCU films, but as we record this, it's Saturday, August 3rd, as we're recording this. Currently, Deadpool and Wolverine had the largest R-rated opening weekend of all time, the 8th best opening weekend of all time, regardless of rating. And then as of yesterday, the box office was at $630 million. The film is expected to overtake The Passion of the Christ as the biggest R-rated film ever by Sunday.
Wow.
So, with all of that knowledge now in your head, will Hugh Jackman return as Wolverine?
He should not. But
he should not.
Okay. I think he will. But this is Marvel's opportunity to cast somebody new, and I think they should do it. I have no clue who they should pick, but we need to say goodbye to Hugh Jackman. They covered up, they had him in that suit. They gave him CGI abs when they needed to, I'm assuming.
Yeah, they did.
He can't just keep getting fit enough for the role. And you can even kind of tell that he's the version of Wolverine he's playing feels just as tired and worn out as he probably is in the real life with having to play the character. And they'd have to start paying him Robert Downey Jr. levels of money to be able to, for him to come back at all, I think. And I don't know if they can afford it. Though maybe they can afford it now. This movie's made enough money. But I just don't know. They need to get the X-Men established first. And I don't know. I think it would be better to, cut the umbilical cord, move on to something new. But
Yeah.
Hopefully soon.
Well, I mean,
I really want to see. We have to get a Hulk Wolverine fight on screen. Like we need this stuff.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, they do that sort of. There's that scene at the very, very end of this movie that did feel very like fourth wall breaking, where, Deadpool is like, so I'll see you around. And then, Wolverine says, probably not.
Yeah.
And so I feel that feels as if it's, Hugh Jackman talking to the audience saying, I'm done here. But yeah, like you said, who knows? They could back a dump truck of money up to his door and just be like, hey, can you just show up in this Doomsday movie and like beat the shit, beat the shit out of or Doctor Doom movie and beat the shit out of Robert Downey Jr. for a quick sec and that'll get butts in theater seats, and I think they can afford it because did you hear about like the leaked salaries of Robert Downey Jr. and the Russo brothers?
I didn't hear the exact numbers. I just knew it was pretty high.
Yeah, their salaries to return to the MCU leaked, and it's $40 million per person.
Wow.
So 40 mil for Robert Downey Jr. and then 40 mil apiece for the Russo brothers. So
and I also heard that the Russos coming back was a prerequisite for getting RDJ involved.
Really? Okay. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that because he doesn't. Yeah, there's no way that Robert Downey Jr. is gonna show up to be in a movie that's directed by fucking Dustin Daniel Cretton or whatever that guy's name was who did Shang-Chi, because that's the guy who was supposed to do the next two Avengers movies, but he was unceremoniously booted. Like he's done. I doubt we'll ever see anything by that guy again that's over, like a $5 million indie picture.
And for that matter, are the characters from this phase even gonna matter? Like, are they gonna show up in this next Avengers movie?
You mean like the older characters like Thor and Hulk and stuff?
No, I mean the new blood, like that. Like they've booted the directors. Is Shang-Chi gonna get downgraded? Are we gonna see the Eternals again?
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm wondering. It's like, how relevant are any of these people going to be?
I don't think so. I mean, the Eternals, definitely not. I think if, whatever the new Avengers looks like, I think it's going to be a mix of the old and the new, where we'll get Hulk in there, we'll get Thor in there, but then we'll also have, Anthony Mackie's Captain America will be in there. Maybe Kamala Khan probably will be in there. It'll be a mix, I think.
Because they got to use these TV characters as much as they can. And I thought it was interesting that Zeb Wells was involved. Because he's a comic book writer, right?
He is, yep. Yeah. Very, very He mostly writes for Marvel. I think he might actually have an exclusive contract writing Marvel comics. But yeah, his stuff is pretty decent as far as his Marvel event stuff goes.
Sorry to veer off in that direction. It just popped up, and I had forgotten to call that out earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But yet again, like, Marvel has us waiting and seeing. We just have to hurry up and wait and maintain our excitement levels, because this. For all of the things we took issue with, this is a adrenaline shot into the heart of this cinematic universe that was flagging, but not like, at least they're making movies. We have gone 5 years without a Star Wars movie, and Lucasfilm apparently is not interested in making more Star Wars movies. And at least Marvel still is trying to right the ship a little bit, but for the love of God, just stop with the multiversal bullshit. You've made all this talk about the sacred timeline. Let's just stay there for a while. And like we've kind of have mentioned, inevitably I'm going to be disappointed in that regard, because the easiest creative choices they can make is just leaning on that aspect.
Yeah, and let's keep these things to like 1 or 2 a year also, because
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons, I mean, there are many reasons why Deadpool and Wolverine was successful, but one of the reasons is because this is the only MCU film on the calendar for 2024. And so, they people were able to get excited about something like an MCU film again because it has been a year since we've had one. And so I know that they're gonna probably ramp up again here and start shooting these things out again, but let's keep it to 2 a year max, please.
Because kind of like the comic book bust of the 90s, you know, eventually you just water everything down by oversaturating the experiences people can have. And not everyone has the budget to go to 4 of these a year, and not everybody has the attention span for 4 of these a year. So there's too many other distractions, much like our first mentionable this week, because you've been taking in the Olympics, and as have I.
Yeah, I've been watching probably more Olympics this year than any other previous year, and I really been enjoying, especially watching the hometown athletes, from the Minneapolis area. We've got very very decorated gymnast Suni Lee. Just did really really well in her events so far, and she's been getting the big like Olympian celebrity push by NBC also, where they're because she has the backstory about how she had like a kidney disease last year and she never thought she would be an Olympian again, and so she's really been getting the push from NBC, and I think it's there's a reason why, because she's really good. And then we have the swimmer Reagan Smith, also from the Minneapolis area, who also medaled in swimming. So I really really like seeing that stuff. And then on top of that, I mean, I've enjoyed everything about this as far as, I loved the opening ceremony. I don't care if it was satanic or not. I thought if it was satanic, I thought that's really actually really cool because, you've got Gojira in there
That was
playing
awesome.
on like, yeah, and you've got like a generic like Assassin's Creed guy, and then you have this really fucking weird like Last Supper tableau. And I think the Olympic artistic director or whoever, they just need to man up and just say that the Last Supper was an influence, because it totally fucking was.
Yeah.
Have the balls to say it was, because I don't know, I liked all that stuff. I thought it was pretty ballsy to do something like that. And so yeah, I've really been enjoying it all.
And I've only really been tuning in because I have a relative all competing. Katie Ledecky is my cousin. We were both part of the O'Connor clan from northeastern Montana, and I've actually I spent the night at her grandma's house, probably about 6 or 7 years ago, because we were in Williston helping my sister move, because she's a very cool lady, Mary, and and Katie Ledecky is the goat.
Yeah.
It's almost been boring, ever since the 2012 Olympics, watching her compete, because there's just never any doubt. She is so far ahead in this clip that you don't see any of her competition in those distance swims that she does. And there's I have a Katie Ledecky Fam Club Shamrock shirt, hanging in my closet. I thought about wearing it today, but I just didn't have the time to throw it on before we got going. But whenever I tell people that, they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I only met her once when she was a baby, but we're related." So I claim her. My mentionable this week is the fact that I have a teething son who wakes me up in the middle of the night, and I can't always fall back asleep. So I'm grateful that the Steam Deck performance for Baldur's Gate 3 has been greatly enhanced, because I've actually gotten into the meat of that game. I finally have some, I have the muscle memory for navigating the menus with a controller, and God, this game is so fucking intimidating, but it is so addicting.
Yeah,
I
it's
can't
awesome.
get enough of it. And I just have this like anxiety with every choice I make, or like, anything that I do, because I'm just thinking to myself, what am I missing? Like what haven't I tried doing? Like I
Mm.
can't think of a game that had this much depth to the possibilities of its gameplay. Because I watched clips of people who are like, oh yeah, here's this random really awesome weapon you can get if you do these like 20 bizarre things in succession and do it exactly right. And I'm like, oh well, I definitely didn't do that, so like that door is closed to me now. But it is so much fun, and it's understandable that it's had a chokehold on the gaming world for as long as it has, even during early access. Like people
Mhm.
forget like how long this game has actually truly been out there in certain capacities. But it like you could play this game forever. Jake Decker sent me a screenshot of his dad's Steam profile for Baldur's Gate 3. Guess how many hours the mayor of Dickinson, North Dakota has put into Baldur's Gate?
Oh God. I mean, it's got to be hundreds, like 300, 400.
500 plus. 500 plus
Jesus.
hours into Baldur's Gate 3. So
Oh my God.
voters, keep that in mind. If we
Yeah.
have anybody from Dickinson watching, maybe check up on what he's doing when he's at the office, because he may be doing a random playthrough with the new character for all you know.
Yeah. I think I beat the game in about 100. It took me about 100 hours, and
And I'm only
yeah,
about
it,
20
this
deep into it at this point.
okay. Are you in Act 2 yet,
I'm
or
a,
are you still
I'm
in
a,
Act
I'm
1?
about to like
Okay.
I'm about like, but that's what I mean. Like I feel very fulfilled, and I've like barely scratched the surface of just even like
Yeah.
my single playthrough of it.
You're about to get to like the best the thing that I always think back on when I think about this game, like reminisce on it, is how strong the villains are. And yeah, I think you're about, I don't know if you've met him yet, but J.K. Simmons plays this villain Ketherick Throm,
Hmm.
and he's so memorable. He's so good in this game. And I think you're about to meet him once you start Act 2. But then on top of that, Act 3 introduces all these other villains that are just so great. And yeah, just incredible, incredible game. And who are you romancing? I got to know.
At this point, um, uh, Gale is really horny for me, but I'm not. I'm not. I don't know. I'm not really interested in that. Uh, I really want to get in with the Githyanki. Like, I
Yeah.
forget. Yeah, like I think that could be spicy. But I also had an opportunity to fuck a bear that I passed on because I just wasn't ready to handle that level of degeneracy in my role play quite yet. But yeah, all doors are open. Like
Yeah.
I do want to get into Shadowheart's pants, but she tends to disapprove of most of my choices, so I think that door is closing.
Yeah, I think she's kind of the favorite. But yeah, I chose Lae'zel, the Githyanki, and that was a really great story too. That whole, if you romance her, the whole side story involving that is just really really good too. And so yeah, I highly recommend that. But yeah,
Can you be
I cannot wait
polyamorous
to.
in this game, or are you closed off to one or the other?
No, you can do more than one, I think, if you
Okay.
want. Yeah, I mean, there are certain, depending on if you go, renegade or paragon or whatever, evil or good or whatever, there are certain romances that you are locked out of. And there are certain ones that don't even show up unless you're like, I can't remember her name, but the blue skinned like devil woman,
Mm.
you can only romance her if you make the most evil decisions like all the time.
Oh,
So
it's like the
it,
the Dark Seed storyline or whatever it's called, like the whatever that path is. Yeah,
yeah,
there's a
yeah,
YouTuber named Strategy, like it's Strat Edgy is his name,
okay,
and he does these really entertaining, like this is how you play this game like this. He check him out. He's really entertaining, and he almost makes me want to play Morrowind just so I can play it the way he does it, because he gets into the builds and whatever the story choices you do. Um, and he did one on that. Like if you want to do that particular dark path, he's like, this is how you commit to it. You know, like this is how you mentally prepare, and like this is exactly how you go about it. Yeah, it's
Yeah, you'll have to update us on your progress down the line, because I want to hear what you think of it.
It'll be a recurring mentionable, because I struggle with figuring out which game I actually want to play. I've taken Hades 2 as far as early access will take me, and I just needed something, richer, and I don't want to wait for Rogue Trader to update, because it takes about 10 years. For some reason, it just goes so slow, because I'm playing off of my SD card instead of the hard drive of the Steam Deck. And I have Baldur's Gate on the drive itself, because it takes up almost the whole fucking thing. And I haven't uninstalled it. So I was like, I'll give this another chance. And I haven't been able to put it down.
Yeah, awesome.
But that kind of does it for us this week. What are we going to be... what's coming up in the next 2 weeks for us, Matt?
Yeah, so next week it's my turn for the minisode, and I'm going to be doing part 2, the second and final part of my Star Trek The Next Generation watch through, my sort of thoughts. I've never watched it before. This is my first time watching it, and so it's going to be seasons 5 through 7 that I'm going to be talking about. I've finished the series now, and I've got a lot of thoughts, and then the week after that, for our next podcast episode, we will be doing the next Alien film,
Romulus, which is a cyberpunk movie, which is why my interest is piqued, as much as it's a straight ahead, or at least it appears to be a straight ahead alien movie, as opposed to the grand origins story that Ridley Scott had been doing for the last 2 entries. So I'm really excited for that one, to see what Fede Alvarez is able to do. And one last parting question for you, and maybe you can answer it later, but are you going to do Deep Space Nine?
That was the one, if I'm going to watch more, that is the one that I will watch, because that's the one I've been told to watch by a lot of people, but I'm kind of torn right now between doing that or like taking a complete left turn and watching the Battlestar Galactica reboot, because that's
have you never seen that?
No, I've never seen that. That's what's his name from For All Mankind. He did a bunch of TNG too, but that guy.
You gotta do Battlestar. That was I wasn't watching it as it was airing, but in like the late aughts, my family were getting it on Netflix, and I can't recommend that enough. So yeah, if you want to go in a different direction, and break up, your sci-fi experiences, that's the way to go. Like that show holds up. Yeah. And unfortunately, we're not going to be getting a new reboot series out of that. They announced that that's dead. So
that's right. Yeah.
So get what we have, because it's well worth it. But thank you, as always, Matt, for joining me. This was a great discussion. And thank you to everybody who watched, if you made it all the way to the end. And we'll see you all in a couple weeks.
Yep. See ya.